Hi guys, we are going to talk about glassware and equipment today. I'll show you the different pieces that are going to be on your quiz so that you're familiar with them, and hopefully this will help you study. So I wanted to show you, the first one is goggles. You're probably familiar with that, and you just put it on like this, and it obviously helps protect your eyes from splashes and so on. You can adjust these right here. And if you need help adjusting them, I can help you, but you can pull them so that they're tighter or looser if you would like. Let's talk about the different pieces of glassware where you can run your reactions here. So first, this is a beaker. It does have graduations on it, but we never ever measure in a beaker. It's not very precise or accurate. This is a graduated cylinder, and we usually use a graduated cylinder to measure. And then this is an Erlenmeyer flask. And again, it has graduations, but we never use it to measure. This is just an estimate. So we do not measure in an Erlenmeyer flask or in a beaker. We do measure in a graduated cylinder. So what is the difference between the three of them? Well, so we said this one, the graduated cylinder, is used to measure. And you see this little thing sometimes in here. This is not to help you measure. In fact, if you put it where you're measuring, you're not going to be able to see it very well. So the whole purpose why we have this plastic thing, this white thing, is if you drop it, it doesn't break. So graduated cylinder for measuring. Now, between the beaker and the Erlenmeyer flask, you can call it E-flask for short, by the way, what would be the advantage to this one? Well, the advantage to this one is that it has a spout, so you can pour easily. You can also use a stirring rod to stir easily. Whereas the Erlenmeyer flask, the reason why we use it is in order to swirl. So if I need to mix my reaction and I don't want to use a stirring rod, it is much easier to swirl here because it's narrow on top, and so it's not going to splash. So that's the main reason why we use an Erlenmeyer flask. Another reason is that we can stopper this in case we need to close it, whereas because the beaker has that spout, it is hard to cover it. So the advantage to the Erlenmeyer flask is that you can swirl and you can stopper it. The advantage to the beaker is that you can pour from it because it has that spout. So they come in different sizes, but let's say you need to, have a very, very tiny amount in your reaction, like you're doing a microscale. You probably want to use a test tube. So test tube is to hold liquids and solids just like all the other ones, but it's just to hold small amounts. Now, if you're doing a really, really, really small microscale experiment, you probably want to use this. This is a well plate or cell wells, and so it has these little tiny compartments that you can run very small amounts of your substances microscale experiments. And it's really good for if you're trying to compare between different experiments, like you're running it several times, changing something in it, and you want to compare because you can run multiple ones at the same time. So these are cell wells or a well plate. The test tubes go in a test tube rack. So this white thing is called a test tube rack. And when you are done with your test tube, with your experiment, you want to wash your test tube. We have test tube brushes that go all the way in so that you clean your test tube. And when it's clean and it's wet, you put it upside down in the test tube rack. That way we know it's clean, and you leave it to dry like this so that the water drains out. Okay, next is a watch glass, kind of similar to the weld plate, except there's only like one spot where you can put it. This is to run, again, microscale experiments on it so you can watch it. It's called a watch glass because of that. Sometimes we also use watch glasses to cover beakers. Now it doesn't have like a tight fit, but it's just to gently cover a beaker. Sometimes we do that. So watch glass. Okay, this is an evaporating dish. So you use this to evaporate things. From its name, it's an evaporating dish. So what you do is you put it over heat, and let's say you have a solid that has water in it that is wet. So to drive off the water, you heat it in the evaporating dish, the water evaporates, and you're left with your solid. All right, let's talk about these here. Oh, one more thing that holds, a couple more that hold your solutions or your substances. This is a volumetric flask. Volumetric flask is usually made or used to make solutions. So they come in different sizes, and this one says 1,000 mils or a liter. So if I want to make a liter solution, I put my solid in there, add the water, and it has just one marking, so it's really good at making solutions that are 1 liter, but it's really bad for any other volume. And then finally with glassware, this is called a burette. So a burette is used to measure liquids that are dispensed. So similar to a graduated cylinder, you'll notice that it's narrow and has graduation, so it's good for measuring. So graduated cylinder and burette are good for measuring, but this is good for measuring the liquids that are inside. This is good for measuring liquids that you dispense. So it actually says 0 on the top, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This one goes up to 50 mils. You fill it up to 0. That means you've dispensed nothing yet. And then it has, this is called a stopcock. So you open it up. When it's parallel like this, it drains the liquid out. When it's perpendicular, that means it's closed. It's not going to let any of the liquid out. So what you do is you open this up, let some of the liquid out, you close it, and then you measure it again. And the amount that you've measured, that's how much was dispensed, how much was let out. All right. Next, let's talk about these. So this is a test tube clamp or a test tube holder. And so you squeeze it like this, open it up, and put the test tube in it. We use these most of the time when we're heating the test tubes, because obviously the glass will get hot. So if my heat source is right here, what I do is I tilt it at an angle so that the opening of the test tube is away from me and away from others, and I move it like that gently. Okay, so this is test tube clamp or test tube holder. These are tongs. So tongs are used to hold usually hot objects that are kind of small. So I can use it to hold the evaporating dish or other small items. And then these are beaker tongs, and they are used to hold hot beakers. Now notice these are very similar to each other. These are beaker tongs. These are just tongs. The regular tongs are all made of metal, and they can hold really tiny objects. Whereas this one has rubber on it, and so it can grip a beaker. So that's the main difference here. These you can put in the heat. So I can hold, something that's tiny. Let's say I want to heat this. I can put it in a Bunsen burner flame. Whereas this one is just meant to hold the beakers. It's not meant to go in the flame or in anything hot. The rubber will melt if you do that. If you try to use the wrong tongs for, the wrong reason, it's not going to work for you. So if I try to use the beaker tongs to hold this, it's not going to hold it very well. All right, so beaker tongs, just tongs, test tube clamp or test tube holder. We also have forceps. Forceps look just like tweezers, except we use them to pick up little tiny pieces of chemicals or something like that. So they're used to hold tiny things, and again, they just look like tweezers, except in the lab we call them forceps. Speaking of holding small amounts of chemicals, so we have the forceps. You can also use a scupula or a spatula. Usually we use these for like powders to scoop them out. So this is called a scupula. It's kind of curved, so you can scoop out. Whereas this one is called a spatula, and it's flat. So spatula is flat, scupula has like a groove in there, so you can scoop things out. So both of these have the same purpose. Let's say I have some powder in here that I'm trying to get a small amount of it and transfer it. I can use either a scupula or a spatula. A spatula will hold a little bit less than the scupula will, but it really doesn't matter. All right, this is a stirring rod. So if I have my reaction going on in my beaker, I can stir with it. Now, a lot of the stirring rods come with, on one side, a little piece of rubber like this. This part is the stirring rod. That's what you stir with. This part is called a rubber policeman. And a rubber policeman is used to scrape things off. So let's say I have some solid in here, or actually a liquid with some solid in there, and I'm trying to like pour it or something, and some of the solid gets stuck because it's a little wet. You can use this rubber policeman to kind of scrape it off. Okay. I don't think rubber policeman is on your list, so you don't need to really know that for our quiz. This is just FYI, but the glass part is the glass rod, the stirring rod. All right, next is pipette. So there are volumetric pipettes. I'm just getting some water. There are volumetric pipettes and there are barrel pipettes. These are barrel pipettes. They're plastic. Those are the ones that we're going to use for the most part. They're used to transfer small amounts of liquid. So what you do is you squeeze the pipette, then put it into your liquid, let go, and the liquid goes into the pipette. You take it out, you want to transfer it into something else, so then you just squeeze it, squeeze the head, and the liquid comes out. These are disposable. Unless you used it for water or something like that, you can keep it. It's probably clean, but they are disposable. You can throw it away after you use it, so you don't have to worry about cleaning it. If you really need to clean it, you get some clean water, and you get some of the water in here, you move it around, dump it out, and you do that a couple of times until it's pretty clean. All right, next we have a ring stand. This is called a ring stand. And the ring stand is used to hold things up high. This is called a ring clamp or an iron ring, either way, ring clamp or iron ring. So what you do is you open this up, put it through here, and then you tighten. Okay, just like that. So ring stand, ring clamp or iron ring. And this is a clay triangle. So if you need to use a clay triangle, it's used to hold things on the ring stand. So you get your ring stand, your iron ring, and then you put that like this. Okay. And what is the purpose for this? It's to hold items, usually on top of a flame or something. So maybe an evaporating dish. So when we use an evaporating dish, depending on how big your iron ring is, it might fall. So we use this to keep it kind of in its place. Okay, and then you can use a Bunsen burner to heat your substances. So you put your Bunsen burner here, you connect it to the gas, and you turn on the Bunsen burner flame, and then it heats up your substances that are in here. Okay, so let's review these. Ring stand, iron ring or ring clamp, clay triangle or pipe stem triangle, either one's okay, evaporating dish, and Bunsen burner. You don't need to memorize the setup, I'm just showing you what we would use it for. Okay, what if I want to heat up something that is flat on the bottom, like a beaker? You know, this one works really well with a clay triangle because it kind of is curved at the bottom. If I have a beaker that I need to heat up, I don't want to use that clay triangle because it's not going to make my beaker very steady. So what I use is something called a wire gauze or wire mesh. Wire gauze or wire mesh. It's a square piece of wire. So you take your ring stand, your ring clamp, you put your wire gauze, and then you can put the beaker on top. Okay, and then you can heat it, of course. All right. This one is a weigh boat. A weigh boat is used to mass chemicals. So we don't want to put our substances right on the balance. This is my balance here. It's just not plugged in, but this is what it looks like. So I don't want to put my substances right on the balance because it's going to ruin the balance. So what you want to do is use a weigh boat, and they come in different sizes. We have a small one and a big one. This is the big one. We even have a huge one too. But this is the size that we're usually going to use. So what you do is you put the weigh boat on the balance, and then there's a button that says on/0. So you hit that 0 button, and what it does is it does not take into account the mass of the weigh boat, so that it reads 0. And then when you add your substance, then the mass that you're reading is just the mass of your substance, not the mass of the weigh boat plus your substance. So these are also disposable, just like the plastic pipettes. So after you're done, you can just throw them away. And then finally, this is the chemical hood or the fume hood right there. If we are doing experiments where we have a lot of fumes or vapors that are not good for us, we usually just put it in the hood. If we have an experiment that we're running like overnight or something like that, then usually we'll leave it in the fume hood as well. All right, hope this helps. And good luck studying for your glassware quiz. Bye, guys.